Do you have a piece of furniture that you still love, but you're just not thrilled with the fabric? Either it's outdated or it's dirty, or you're just sick and tired of it. Well, if you're thinking of making a slipcover, this is the easiest style of furniture to slipcover. A slipper chair slipcover. So let me show you how to do it. First step is to gather your supplies. You're gonna need your welt, scissors, your fabric scissors, and your fabric. So I've already got all my fabric pieces cut, and the reason why I have them cut ahead of time is because this is my second slipper chair in this exact fabric, and this is the fabric that I bought in a drapery panel from the thrift store. So I only had one width and a half, 3 yards, and then a half of a width, 3 yards. So my fabric is very limited, and so that is why I'm using a contrasting colored welt, and that's why I had to strategically plan out my fabric cuts so that I would have enough to do both chairs with the limited amount of fabric that I've got. If I were working on a large piece in a client's home, for a sofa, I generally cut and pin in my client's home. That means that I have to actually just drape the fabric on the sofa and cut around each of the pieces. I'm not able to roll out my fabric and really strategically plan my cuts. This is the first piece, and one of the reasons why I strategically planned out the cuts is because I wanted to have the same pattern on the inside back on both chairs. When you are cutting and pinning a slipcover, if it's a symmetrical piece of furniture, then you want to cut and pin in reverse. So you're going to reverse pin fit your slipcover, which means your fabric will be inside out. So I'm going to stand back and look at my pattern and make sure it's where I want it. I almost always use one piece of fabric for the inside back and the deck or the seat. This particular chair does not have a loose seat cushion. If it did have a loose seat cushion and this was the deck of the chair or the platform of the chair, I still, and if there's a cushion on top of it, I still go ahead and use the same fabric for the deck. I see some people that cut the fabric back here and then use less expensive or a different fabric for the deck like you would do in upholstery, but I don't do that on slipcovers. I do that in upholstery, but on slipcovers I just use the same piece because it just makes the process so much faster. So anyways, I'm just tucking in with my fingers back there. Okay, so I've got that positioned the way I like it. My fabric is straight and square. I'm gonna just check and make sure my pattern is the same as the other chair. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put a couple pins in the back just to keep it up. Then the next step is to attach the welt. So with this chair, I'm going to do welt up the front and the back. So I'm going to pin the welt onto the front. I've got my pot O pins, and let's see. I'm going to make sure I've got enough there. Come down to there. I just want to come down to where the skirt will attach to that, and I've got this for the back. And I'm going to just pin across the top. I'm going to go ahead and make a relief cut right here in the corner of the welt so that the welt will turn this corner nice and easy. And I do want this corner to be pretty square. You can make the corner rounded around this, but I really want it to have a box and a square look to it. So I'm going to square off that welt. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that my welt is staying pretty close to where the seam is on this upholstery. You don't always have to follow what the upholstery is doing, and I oftentimes do not follow what the upholstery is doing on a slipcover because I like my slipcovers to be fairly simple. Sometimes upholstery can be finicky looking. I'm going to go ahead and trim off this extra fabric. Just down to there, and I'm going to leave that hanging because I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to pin across the top and down the other side, and then we'll address this relief cut. Okay, so I'm just going to move that welt so that it's towards the front of this box on the chair. And you're just kind of feeling the welt there. Okay, now we'll make the relief cut on the welt over here at this corner. I'm going to go ahead and crease that so I know that's my corner there. And then making sure my welt is kind of running down that same seam line as the upholstery. This is going to be a quick overview of how to make this slipcover, but I do have a fully comprehensive workshop / course on how to slipcover this exact chair from beginning to end. Very detailed, all the way from measuring to determine how much fabric you need to buy, to making the welt, to all the different types of skirts you can put on this, a gathered skirt, a box pleated skirt, or just a tight fitted band and then Velcro. So I do have a full comprehensive workshop. If you're interested in all the nitty gritty details on how to slipcover this chair, you can click the link in the description box below and you can go to the course. So now we're down to the bottom, and let me show you how this relief cut part works. All right, so the way that I like to do a slipcover is I prefer for my skirt to start right at the top of either the seat or the deck. Some people will bring this down and put the welt like down here. Some people will create a band here with welt here and welt here, and then the skirt from here. But I just prefer for my skirt to be a full long skirt from the deck, if there's a cushion, to the floor. I just feel like if there's a band there and the skirt starts down here, it just looks outdated to me and squatty. You would see like in the 70s that in upholstery and things that's how it would be. There would be a band there and then the skirt would start like way down here. And I just don't like the way it looks, and that's just personal preference. See how this fabric is not wanting to lay down flat here? We need to put a relief cut in here. So this is where the crease is. So we're just going to give it a clip like that, and that already relieves that. And we can go ahead and get our welt straight down because the welt is going to come down there. I'm just going to put a pin there. And then we can go ahead and just put a couple clips this way in it. And that will get tiny little V-notch there. But that just opens up that corner and lays down that fabric nice and flat. So now I can, when it comes time, I'll be able to just put my skirt in right here. Okay? That's how you do that corner. There we go. So that'll work because we've got a little bit of fabric tucked in there. This will come down. And this is probably the hardest part of a slipcover, is getting this relief cut right here. All right, so the next step, I'm going to pin this boxing piece to here. That'll go here. So that means we're going to remove these pins, feeling this with our fingers and repinning. Okay, and since I have a very limited amount of fabric, I can't match the pattern from the inside back to the boxing like I really should, but this is for myself. You know, I don't have enough fabric. I was able to sort of match. Let me just get a couple pins in here and I'll show you. So what I'm doing is I'm just holding the fabric between my fingers and feeling that welt, and just keeping this fabric positioned where it is, and basically just adding this boxing piece in. Okay, I'm going to put a relief cut in the corner here of the fabric so that it will lay down flat around that corner. All right, you see how that pattern is not quite matching, but it sort of looks like it coordinates. That's the best I can do with the amount of fabric that I've got. So it kind of doesn't matter a whole lot which side you put the pins on, but you do want to try to make sure you put all the pins on the same side so that when you're sewing, you can see your pins and take them out easily. Go all the way down this side. I'm putting pins real close here because I've got a real tight situation here, because I've got that relief cut right there. I don't want to miss this fabric, so that's why I put 3 pins in there pretty close. so then the next step is to put the welt on the back side and add the outside back. Okay, here's my outside back piece, and the pattern is not going to match on the back at all. See, I've got this piece here, and I don't have that same pattern until here, so really this should come like all the way up to here, but if I do that, I'm not gonna make it down to the skirt. It's okay because I'm gonna have these not floating in the room. So these will be up against my fireplace, so it won't matter so much. All right, so I'm gonna put the welt on, and then I'll repin the back. Technically, you could do this all as one step. Once you get a little bit of experience, you could pin the welt on at the same time as pinning your outside back on. But if you're a beginner, just go ahead and pin the welt on first and then reposition the pins with the outside back. And I'll just go ahead and pin my welt on. I'm just gonna put a few pins in here to position it, and then I'll pin the outside back on. I wanna make sure that my corners are in the same spot, front and back. So I'm gonna cut a notch. I can see the grain of the fabric, and I'm gonna notch my fabric in the same spot. And if you mess up on your notch at the corner, it doesn't matter. You can cut 3 in there. It does not matter. That's gonna be sewn into the seam. You won't see that at all. But I wanna make sure that my bend and my corner is in the same place front and back so that it's not wonky, and that will come with practice. Like, these kinds of things are the little details that you begin to pay attention to when you've been doing this for a long time. One thing that I'd like to do is you want to make sure that your boxing is the same all the way across your piece. You don't want to get it real tight over here and have just like a 3-inch boxing here, and then have it get wider and wider as you get across here and have 4 inches on this side. You may want to take out a little ruler, look at that, and make sure that it's pretty well the same. So now let's put the back on. And I'm just making sure that my patterns are lined up from like that, you know? So they're not gonna match, but at least they'll be lined up. And I'm just putting some stay pins in there. So when I pinned the welt on, I didn't put that many pins. I might have only put 3 or 4 across the top. But now when I'm pinning the final pin here with all the layers together, it's good to put in a lot of pins. Like, I put a pin every inch probably, because the more pins, the better final product that you'll get, because you're gonna end up moving this piece around a lot once you take it off your piece of furniture, and as you're sewing it, it's gonna get moved around a lot. You wanna make sure that you have enough pins in order to hold it all together, because once you take it off your piece of furniture and you're at your sewing machine, if some of your fabrics shift around or you lose a pin, you're in trouble, particularly if you're working on a piece from a client and you can't go back and put it back on your piece of furniture. The more pins, the better, particularly in places that there's an intersection of 3 fabrics or more. Okay, and you want it to be a snug fit. Like in the corners, I like to have a pin on either side of a corner so that I know for sure this is where I need to turn. I mean, I know because of the V-notch or the relief cut, but so you want the back to be snug on here, but not tight. Okay. So you see how it's not tight, but it has a nice fit. So let me trim off excess here. So that is essentially it. For a slipper chair slipcover, that's it, other than putting the skirt on now. That's the whole slipcover. So you just saw that in a matter of minutes. So I need to trim off the front. This is the problem with thrift store fabric, but it's fine. We will make it work. and it will be fine. And stick to the end because I'm going to show you a little trick on how to keep your slipcover in place when you don't have a seat cushion. On a Parsons chair with no seat cushion, sometimes if your slipcover doesn't fit really snugly, your slipcover seat can move around quite a bit. That's the beauty of having a cushioned seat, is that that cushion keeps your slipcover so nicely in place. So let me just say one thing about cutting and pinning slipcovers. I almost always will cut and pin the whole slipcover, the whole body of the slipcover, before I ever take it off of the piece of furniture to sew it. When I first started slipcovering, I would put together one piece, take it off, take it to the sewing machine and sew that piece on. Then I'd pin the next piece, the boxing piece, take it off, take it to the sewing machine and sew that piece. The problem with that is that every time you take your slipcover on and off, things get a little bit shifted and a little bit wonky and a little bit off square, and so you end up with fabric that's not put on completely square, and there's just a lot of shifting that happens when you take your fabric on and off your piece. So that's why I like to go ahead and cut and pin the whole thing from start to finish, and then I take that completely pinned slipcover over to my sewing machine and sew the entire thing. Not only is it faster, but it gives you a better product. Next step is to put on the welt to go around the body here and then attach the skirt. So since this is all I have left for welt, I'm going to make more welt. Since the only thing left now is to attach the welt and attach the skirt, I'm going to go ahead and take this off of the chair and sew the whole body. All right, so when sitting down to sew the body of the slipcover, like I said, I always sew the areas where there's any three-way junction or more, and then I'll often come in and just do the corners and then go and do all the straightaways. So I've already done all 4 corners, and now I'll go ahead and sew the long straight parts. And I'll sew on the side where I have my pins, and I use a push stick when I'm doing slipcover sewing to help keep my fabric flat and to make sure that I don't have any puckers or shifting. And also it helps me to push my pin heads out of the way, because I mostly do not take my pins out as I'm sewing this, because if for some reason I ran out of bobbin thread and didn't notice it, or my stitches were skipping, or I just have some missed stitches and I didn't secure my seam real well, if I had been taking the pins out, I would have a big gaping hole and I wouldn't know that, and then I wouldn't know where to put my pins back in. And if I'm working on a piece for a client and I don't have the furniture here, I would have to be guessing at where to put them back in, which can be done successfully, but it's just much easier if you leave your pins in until the end, check your seams, and make sure that everything is good to go. The other thing that you have to do frequently is look underneath your fabric and make sure that your fabric is all tucked away and nothing is getting underneath your presser foot that shouldn't be there. Because I've done that lots and lots of times, sewn over extra pieces of fabric that should be tucked. So I just push the pin heads out of the way. If it comes out, so be it, but I'll just check my stitches. If a pin comes out, I'll just check my stitches and make sure that everything is secure. That all looks good, so I'll take my pins out. Okie dokie, so let's turn this around and we'll check our corners and see if we got all of our corners in nice and tight to the welt. We might have to go back in and tighten those up. Okay, that one looks great. Oh, they look good. Actually, that one could go in a little tighter. See, look at that. See how that one's not real tight in, and you can see the stitching, the welt stitching. So I need to come in closer on that one. The other 3 are good. Much better. Okay, now we can go ahead and put this back on the chair right side out, and we'll pin the welt around the bottom for the skirt. Got my welt. And I always do this part, pinning the welt on for the skirt right side out, because it just makes it so much easier. You can see where it's going to end up. We'll start in the back because that is where we want to have our join. Just going to put a couple pins just to keep it in place-ish. Okay, so now we've just got basically some stay pins there. As you can see, the chair goes higher in the front, and particularly because we have no fabric over here. If I had had more fabric to work with, then I would have brought that fabric down so that this could be level. So my skirt will have to be a little bit longer in the front, but that's okay. Now I'm gonna start here and actually pin this on. Okay, same thing here. I'm going to do just like a little upholstery pleat here. Just a tiny little one on this side because it's mostly just eased around. Really tight with fabric here. Okay, there we are. I already did this piece here because that was really tight with fabric also. Okay, so we'll join this. Now that's all pinned on, we'll go to the sewing machine, sew this all on, and then we'll do our skirt. So here's the join. I'll start on this side of the join and sew all the way around and then back to here, just in case for some reason I need to adjust this, I can still do that. Oh, just broke it. Where's my knitting needle? There it is, my trusty knitting needle. Okay, we're back to the beginning and all is well, no adjustments needed. On my seams, all looks good. Take all these pins out. Okay, now I'll go put it back on. We'll trim off these edges and then attach the skirt. Okay, so the next step is the skirt. Now there's a lot of different skirts you could do. Initially I wanted to do a gathered or a pleated, a gathered skirt or a ruffled skirt to the floor because you don't have to match pattern. So with a box pleated skirt, which is just flat and then you have the pleats on the corners, you really should be matching the pattern from here onto the skirt. I don't have enough fabric for that. That's why I was going to do a ruffled skirt, but I don't have enough fabric for that either. So I could have done a ruffled skirt had I made it a short skirt. I don't like the legs of this chair, so I decided I didn't really want to do that either. So I'm going to do a box pleated skirt and just not match the pattern since it's for myself. I'm going to be the only one that's going to notice that it's not matched. It's going to look off, but that's kind of the only option I have. So that's what we're going to do. I could potentially do just a banded bottom and not even do a skirt, where I would just create a wide band here and then put another welt on the bottom and then potentially put Velcro on the bottom of my chair. If this was the bottom of the welt, then I would put Velcro here on the inside and then I could attach that here and I would just have welt, a tight little banding, and then welt again, and it would just look like upholstery. But I don't like the legs of the chair, so I really want a full-length skirt. So that's what we're gonna do, is I'm gonna do a box pleated skirt, just have to live with the mismatched pattern on the front. I do wanna say that if you want to have detailed instruction on a ruffled or gathered skirt and just a band, then the workshop that I did, that I have linked in the description box below, I go over all of those style skirts in that video. So I was a little bit wrong about this. I had cut all my pieces ahead of time, and this is the skirt piece. And turns out I was able to match the pattern from the seat down to the skirt. The placement is off, but at least the pattern is matching. However, And obviously the sides, you can't match that pattern because the fabric is going a different direction, and the back, same thing. If I had more fabric, I would normally cut these pieces individually, but I don't. So I'm short this much fabric. So now I'm gonna have to piece together that. I got the most important parts of the pattern matched up in the front. Now I'll just pin across the whole front. Okay, let's see how the pattern looks. Okay. Yep, so now I can create I'm just gonna create just a tiny little kick pleat in each corner. It's just gonna be small because I don't have enough fabric to make a deep kick pleat or a regular kick pleat. So I'm going to bring the fold right to the corner where my relief cut is, and then I'm going to do about an inch kick pleat like that. Put a pin there, and then same thing on this side. I'm going to bring that fold right to the relief cut, bring that back and pin it. Okay, all the way around. Same style kick pleats in the back corners too. Okie dokie, they're all done, and I think this is probably where I'll use them, is out here on my patio next to my ping pong table. So as you can see, the skirts are to the floor, and it's just a real soft and flowing box pleated skirt. So this one I did not press it yet. It's just loose and flowing, and I think it looks really pretty. I just did a really easy rolled hem on the bottom, and a rolled hem always gives you that kind of wavy look to it, and I really like it. I think it came out really pretty. And the pattern match from the chair seat to the skirt came out really nice on this one. And then you can see this one here, I did press it, so it does have a little bit more of a tailored look to it. But as you can see, the pattern match on the skirt to the seat is no bueno. I wish I'd have moved this pattern here over a bit so that at least it would have been centered on the seat pattern, but I guess I wasn't really thinking. But I really like them. I think they came out really cute, and I like them out here better than I liked them in my living room. Promised I would show you how or what I do to keep my slip covers in place so they don't shift around when you're sitting on them. And there's two things that I like to do. First of all, I will sew a ribbon from my seam line. So I did go ahead and serge all of my seams, and then I go ahead and sew a ribbon onto that seam on both sides of my chair, and then I tie it underneath the chair in order to keep that slipcover from moving. However, there is even a better and easier way to do it, and that is to put a little stay pin. You can either use a T-pin here, or you can use a twist pin. I used one of these upholstery pins, and I only use this because I couldn't find my upholstery T-pins, but this works really, really well. And you just put it right into pull it tight, put it right into that seam there, push that baby all the way down so that it doesn't affect the way that your skirt drapes. And now this is totally secure, so now it won't shift around when you sit in your chair. It'll stay put really nicely. Because if you don't secure a slipcover like this that doesn't have a seat cushion, whenever somebody sits here and they get up, this will shift around and you'll have to constantly be fixing it. So that's a really good way to keep a Parsons chair seat in place. So that's it. The slipcovers are finished. If you would like to get much more comprehensive instruction with very detailed and explicit instructions on how to make the skirt, every detail, you can click the link in the description box below for my beginner slipcover workshop, and I'll see you in there.